Thank you for watching Darker Things, the series that brings you deep dives into history's most disturbing events, personalities, true crime, conspiracy theories.
What might lead a woman to become one of America's most notorious female serial killers? In the realm of true crime, few stories are as dark and tragic as that of Aileen Wuornos. Born Aileen Carol Pittman in Rochester, Michigan, her life was marred by hardship from the outset. Her mother, Diane Wuornos, was a mere 15 years old when she married Aileen's father, Leo Dale Pittman, a man with a history of mental illness and criminal behavior. Aileen never knew her father. He was incarcerated for child molestation and eventually took his own life in prison. Diane abandoned Aileen and her older brother Keith, leaving them in the care of their grandparents. This was no safe haven, however. Their grandfather was a violent alcoholic who would mete out harsh physical punishment, while their grandmother was a passive presence, unable to protect her charges from the turmoil. Aileen's life took yet another tragic turn when she became pregnant at 14, allegedly a result of a rape by a friend of her grandfather's. She gave birth to a son, whom she was forced to give up for adoption. This series of traumatic events seemed to set her on a dark path, one that would see her living on the streets and engaging in petty crime and prostitution to survive. Aileen's early life was a crucible of abuse, neglect, and hardship. She was a child who was forced to grow up too fast, thrust into a world that seemed to offer her nothing but pain and rejection. These were the formative years of a woman who would later become infamous for her violent crimes. It's a deeply unsettling narrative, one that forces us to confront the harsh realities of child abuse and neglect, and the lasting impact they can have on a person's psyche. It also raises the question, could these early experiences have been a catalyst for the horrific acts that Aileen Wuornos would later commit? A tragic start to life, but could it be the catalyst for the horrors to come? From a troubled childhood, we move on to a life steeped in crime. In the aftermath of a tumultuous upbringing, Aileen Wuornos found herself straying further from the path of righteousness and deeper into a life marred by criminal activity. As a teenager, Wuornos took to the streets, using prostitution as a means of survival. It was a harsh, unforgiving existence, but for Wuornos, it was a means to an end. The world had dealt her a cruel hand, and she played it as best she could, navigating the perils of life on the fringes of society. However, this was merely the beginning of her descent. As the years rolled on, Wuornos's activities took a darker turn. Her rap sheet grew, peppered with charges ranging from assault to armed robbery. But beneath this surface-level criminality, a more sinister undercurrent was beginning to form. A storm was brewing within Wuornos, a tempest of anger and resentment that would soon be unleashed in a terrifyingly violent manner. The transition from petty criminal to cold-blooded killer is not an overnight transformation. It's a gradual, insidious process, fueled by a potent cocktail of desperation, disillusionment, and dehumanization. For Wuornos, the line between right and wrong became increasingly blurred, obscured by the harsh realities of her existence. Life had taught her that it was a dog-eat-dog world, and she was determined not to be the one who got eaten. So, she took matters into her own hands, turning from victim to predator. She began to see her clients not as sources of income but as threats to her survival. And in her mind, there was only one way to neutralize these threats. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Wuornos's murderous spree didn't start overnight. It was the culmination of years of hardship, anger, and despair. A steady descent into a life of crime that would eventually earn her the dubious distinction of being one of America's most notorious female serial killers. A life spiraling out of control, but the worst was yet to come. What turns a life of crime into a murderous rampage? This question echoes in the dark corners of our minds as we delve into the chilling tale of Aileen Wuornos. It's a question that gives us pause, makes us ponder the labyrinthine depths of human nature. A life mired in hardship and abuse, Wuornos's criminal activities escalated from petty theft and forgery to something far more sinister. The catalyst? A deadly encounter on a Florida highway in late 1989. The victim? Richard Mallory, a 51-year-old electronics store owner. Wuornos claimed it was self-defense, a desperate act of survival against an alleged assault. But did this harrowing incident trigger a dormant darkness within her? Or did it merely give her a taste for blood? As we delve deeper, we find the chilling reality that Mallory's demise was the first in a series of brutal killings. Men, predominantly middle-aged and older, were her targets. Lured under the guise of solicitation, they met their end on desolate highways, their bodies discarded like forgotten relics of a twisted game. Each murder was carried out with a cold efficiency that belied Wuornos's turbulent emotional state. She wielded her .22 caliber pistol not just as a weapon, but as a tool of judgment, a twisted symbol of her own perceived righteousness. It seemed that with each pull of the trigger, she was not just ending a life, but exacting a perverse form of vengeance on a world she felt had forsaken her. But this was not a sustainable path. The more she killed, the more the net began to close around her. The faces of her victims haunted the headlines, their stories whispered in hushed tones of fear and disbelief across the state. The specter of a female serial killer was something the public struggled to comprehend, and law enforcement was under pressure to make an arrest. The line was crossed and there was no turning back. Wuornos's deadly path was set, her fate sealed by her own actions. The question remained, however, how long could she continue her murderous spree before justice would finally catch up with her? In the midst of darkness, love bloomed, but was it genuine? This is the question that haunts the tale of Aileen Wuornos and Tyria Moore. Their paths crossed in a Florida bar in 1976. Tyria, a hotel maid, and Aileen, a highway drifter, found a shared bond in their troubled pasts and quickly became inseparable. Their relationship was far from a fairy tale. It was tumultuous, marked by frequent arguments and Aileen's escalating criminal activities. Yet through it all, they remained together. Aileen, who had previously sold herself for survival, found in Tyria a semblance of normalcy, a reason to dream of a better life. However, as Aileen's actions turned deadly, their relationship took a sinister turn. Aileen committed her first murder in self-defense, or so she claimed, but the killings continued. 7 men lost their lives, and with each crime, Aileen spiraled deeper into the abyss. Tyria, once the beacon of light in Aileen's life, found herself entangled in a web of crime. She was trapped between her loyalty for Aileen and the growing fear for her own life. Yet, it was Tyria who would ultimately lead to Aileen's capture. In a desperate bid to save herself, Tyria made a pact with the police. She agreed to coax a confession out of Aileen, a task she accomplished with chilling efficiency. Aileen, believing she was speaking to her lover, confessed to her crimes over a series of phone calls, not knowing she was sealing her own fate. This marked the end of their relationship. Tyria, the woman Aileen had once killed for, had betrayed her, but was it betrayal? Or was it self-preservation? That's a question that remains a point of debate. Love can blind us, but can it also lead us to betrayal? In the case of Aileen Wuornos and Tyria Moore, love was a double-edged sword, offering both solace and destruction. Their story serves as a chilling reminder of the thin line between love and betrayal, between devotion and self-preservation. Every criminal's reign has an end. For Wuornos, it was betrayal. The woman who had been by her side through thick and thin was the one who would ultimately bring her to justice. Tyria Moore, Wuornos's on-again, off-again lover, played a pivotal role in her capture. But how did this come to pass? Moore had left Wuornos months before the last murder, moving to Pennsylvania. She was there when she received a call from the police informing her of Wuornos's crimes. The woman who had shared her life with Wuornos was now faced with a dilemma of tremendous magnitude. With a heavy heart and the weight of the world on her shoulders, Moore made the decision to cooperate with the police. But this wasn't a simple process. The police needed hard, irrefutable evidence against Wuornos, and Moore was the key to obtaining it. So, a plan was devised. Moore, under police guidance, would make a series of phone calls to Wuornos. The goal? To get Wuornos to confess her crimes. The calls were tense, filled with emotional outpourings from Wuornos and the burden of duplicity on Moore's part, but the strategy paid off. Wuornos confessed to the murders over the phone, sealing her fate. The net began to close around Wuornos. Police arrested her at the last resort, a biker bar in Volusia County, Florida. The woman who had evaded capture for so long, who had committed such heinous acts, was finally in custody. And it was love, twisted and manipulated, that had led to her downfall. In the world of crime, there are no constants. Loyalties shift, alliances break, and even the strongest relationships can crumble under pressure. For Aileen Wuornos, a life filled with hardship, crime, and a desperate search for love ended in the ultimate betrayal. In a twist of fate, love was the catalyst for Wuornos's downfall. Justice demanded a price. For Wuornos, it was her life. The trial of Aileen Wuornos was a spectacle that gripped the nation. Accused of 7 counts of first-degree murder, she stood before the court, her fate hanging in the balance. Her plea? Not guilty. Wuornos claimed self-defense, asserting that each man she killed had tried to assault her while she was working as a prostitute. But the jury saw things differently. The evidence, they said, painted a darker picture, one of a calculated killer who preyed on unsuspecting victims. After a 2-week trial, the jury delivered their verdict: guilty on all counts. The price for her crimes was steep: death by lethal injection. But Wuornos' story didn't end with the verdict. As the date of her execution approached, the media circus surrounding her case only intensified. Talk shows, news outlets, and documentary filmmakers clamored for a piece of the notorious damsel of death. Her face was splashed across television screens and newspaper front pages, her life dissected under the public's watchful eye. The controversy didn't stop at the media. Even the method of her execution came under scrutiny. Some argued that Wuornos, who had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder, was not mentally competent enough to be executed. But despite the outcry, the execution went ahead as planned. On October 9, 2002, Wuornos paid the ultimate price for her crimes. As she lay on the execution table, she issued a final statement, a chilling testament to the troubled mind that had led her down such a dark path. "I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock and I'll be back, like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6, like the movie, big mothership and all, I'll be back." In the face of death, Wuornos remained a figure of controversy. Wuornos' life ended, but her story echoes through time. Her tale, as chilling as it is, has left a deep imprint on media and popular culture. From the gritty underbelly of society to the gleaming screens of Hollywood, Wuornos' life and crimes have been dissected, discussed, and dramatized. Her story has been the subject of numerous films and documentaries, each seeking to unravel the enigma that was Aileen Wuornos. The most notable among these is Monster, a film that catapulted Charlize Theron to stardom with her Oscar-winning portrayal of Wuornos. These cinematic adaptations, while often sensationalized, have shed light on her life, her struggles, and her crimes, casting her not as a one-dimensional monster, but as a complex, deeply troubled individual. Yet, it is not just the silver screen that has been captivated by Wuornos. Her story has permeated popular culture, becoming a symbol of the tragic consequences of a life marred by violence and neglect. Songs have been written about her, books have delved into her psyche, and her name has become synonymous with the dark side of the human condition. At the heart of the fascination with Wuornos is the ongoing debate about her motives and mental health. Was she a cold-blooded killer? Or was she a victim of her circumstances, driven to the brink by a lifetime of abuse and hardship? Was she truly in control of her actions? Or was she at the mercy of her deteriorating mental state? These questions continue to fuel discussions and research, ensuring that Wuornos remains a figure of interest and study. Despite the grim nature of her life and crimes, Wuornos' story serves as a stark reminder of the importance of understanding the roots of criminal behavior. It underscores the need for compassion and intervention for those trapped in cycles of abuse and neglect, and the crucial role of mental health in shaping an individual's actions. A life filled with darkness, a legacy shrouded in controversy. Wuornos' story will continue to echo through time, a chilling testament to the depths to which a human being can sink, and a stark reminder of the societal failures that can lead to such a descent. The story of Aileen Wuornos is one of tragedy and horror. Our hearts extend in deep sympathy for the families of the victims, who were subjected to the unthinkable. The pain they have endured is beyond comprehension, their lives irrevocably marked by the actions of one individual. Yet, it's important to remember that understanding the circumstances that breed such horrifying behavior is not an attempt to justify or excuse it. Rather, it's about prevention. It's about recognizing the signs of a life spiraling out of control, about understanding the impact of a troubled childhood, of systemic failures, of desperation. Aileen Wuornos' life and crimes serve as a stark reminder of the darkest corners of the human psyche. By studying these dark aspects, by delving into the uncomfortable, we may just find the tools we need to recognize, intervene, and possibly prevent such tragedies from recurring. In studying the darkest aspects of humanity, we may find a way to illuminate a path to prevention and intervention.
Eileen Wuornos, definitely a complicated case, one that delves into depths of nature versus nurture argument. What had happened if she had had a normal child? Could someone have intervened when she was a teenager, getting pregnant by one of her grandfather's friends? We will never know. Until next time, I'm your host, Doug Duncan, reminding you that once you enter the dark, you may never be the same.